You possess a kind of inner force that seeks to guide you toward life's tasks, what you are meant to accomplish in the time you have to live. In childhood, this force was clear to you. It directed you towards activities and subjects that fit your natural inclinations, that sparked curiosity that was deep and primal. In the intervening years, the force tends to fade in and out as you listen more to parents and peers, to the daily anxieties that wear away at you. This can be the source of your unhappiness, your lack of connection to who you are and what makes you unique. The first move toward mastery is always inward, learning who you are really and reconnecting with that innate force, knowing it with clarity. You will find your way to the proper career path and everything else will fall into place. It is never too late to start this process. Discover your calling, the life's tasks. Mastery, Robert Greene. I am about halfway through this book, to be quite frank with you. So far, so incredibly well done. I'm no stranger to Robert Greene's books. I've read 48 Laws perhaps 3 times back to front cover, and God knows how many times thumbing through. It's a fantastic book. Seduction's also fantastic. War, Laws of Human Nature, I have read a little bit of. I have not read the entirety of it. I'm yet to get through that. We'll do that soon. But Mastery is fantastic so far, and it's really spoken to me in a way of which I think has been perhaps divinely timed. What I mean by that, I suppose, is that a lot of things in my life have been correlating and transfixing, and it feels as though everything's been building up to this certain point where there's been circumstances through my life, periodically through, of which trials and tribulations have happened, and then clarity and learnings and new wisdom has formed since those passings of those trials. And I think lots of things have been accumulating over these past years to this very point where I'm at now. I mean, obviously, right? That's kind of how time works. But I think in a more philosophical sense, there's been a lot of interesting things that have been playing in my life that have been propelling me forward. I mean, to walk you through what that looks like, a lot of the things back in the day started when, I discovered that I had some semblance of a talent for art, for painting, for drawing, things of that nature. And that started to bleed into my life as I grew up, as I continued to progress in my life. And I started to become more and more skilled in that particular area of life. And so all of a sudden I found myself to be a professional fine artist. I was painting, I was drawing, commissions, selling works, etc., etc. And then things started to change. I had a daughter, got engaged. All of a sudden it was time to earn some real coin, some consistent coin. And slowly but surely, you start to lose a footing and start to lose a grasp on who you really are. And I think that's where this book at the moment has been, I don't know, in a way is divinely timed for me to be reading it. It's landed perfectly where I'm starting to feel like, God, am I losing touch? Sorry, lots of flies today. Am I losing touch with who I was meant to be, who I was called to be, who I was put here on this earth to be? Because I really don't believe that we're here to just simply earn money, pay bills, and die. Perhaps, it might look like that from time to time. And there may be periods and stretches of our lives where we need to do such things. Maybe. But I think that's where mastery comes into play. I think that's where this book starts to really play out a lot for you. I'm not going to read all of it, obviously, but I will touch on some bits and pieces. If you haven't read Robert Greene's books before, what he does is that he takes snippets from history, from individuals typically, and what he does is that he writes out those snippets of these individuals from history in correlation to events in their life, which correlate to the teachings that he wants to embark or impart upon the reader. in this case, he's talking about Leonardo da Vinci in the first chapter here, talking about his calling for him to be this incredible artist and thinker and philosopher and inventor of his time, and this voice that was a part of him through that. Now, Robert's touching on everybody throughout this book is he's utilizing their stories and their life events to illustrate a point that this calling within us, this mastery within us, this innate sense of a vocation that's out there for us, which is a spiritual calling, that's higher purpose for us, has always been present within us. And he's using these people throughout his book, and this is what he does with all of his books, is that he uses these people through history to illustrate points, to use as teaching points of things that he wants to impart upon us. So if you haven't read his books before, that's kind of the style of writing that he does. And it's fantastic, and it reads beautifully, because it's just, we as human beings would learn through stories, right? And so when you have these stories, you sort of retain knowledge a lot better than if it was just straight words. You know what I mean? But look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight some of the bits from Robert's own words, not necessarily the recounts that he has of these individual people from history, but I just want to read through a little bit of different sections in that. So, back to the book. Keys to Mastery. Among his various possible beings, each man always finds one which is his genuine and authentic being. The voice which calls him to that authentic being is what we call vocation. But the majority of men devote themselves to silencing that voice of vocation and refuse to hear it. They manage to make it a noise within themselves, to distract their own attention in order to not hear it, and they defraud themselves by substituting for their genuine selves a false course of life. Defrauding themselves for their genuine selves, for a false course of life. I love that quote. That quote is by Jose Ortega Gasset, or Gazette. Jose Ortega Gazette. Apologies if I just butchered your name, Jose. But beautiful quote. The voice which calls him to be that authentic being we call vocation. And vocation is such an interesting word. When I looked it up, it was this divine calling, a spiritual divine calling, or calling by God. A vocation in your life is something that's a divine calling of your authentic self. Perhaps you would look at it as what you were meant to do here. Is your vocation. It's what you really were set here to do, if you believe in such things. And I never thought about it before. I always thought vocation was just like, the job I work, but it's not. It's that divine calling, that authentic self. Reading this book, you think, and I have thought throughout my life, I can just play a character. And because that's what I did when I was younger, is I was really, really great at drama, and I would be the lead in a myriad of different plays and musicals. I would learn monologues and scripts so easily and effortlessly, and I could perform in front of hundreds of people without any anxiety whatsoever. And I loved doing that. It was always so much joy to hear the audience, gasp or cry or laugh with you. And it's so much fun. If you've never done that before, I'd highly recommend doing something like that. And so I approached life the same way I approached these plays, and the same way I approached these musicals, is that I approached life as if I was a character to play, not understanding that I already had a character to play. And so circumstances would arise and I would adopt a character. Circumstances would fall at my feet and I would adopt a character. I would need to undertake certain actions in my life, say work real estate, say work sales, say work jobs, say work this, say work that. And I would adopt the particular character I thought best fit that situation so that I could just manage myself through it. And it's funny, the things that we do because we believe we have to do those things. For what reason? I don't know. And then you forget your authentic self. Like he says, defraud themselves by substituting for their genuine selves a false course of life. Defrauding themselves. What an interesting phrase. Back to the book. Many of the greatest masters in history have confessed to experiencing some kind of force or voice or sense of destiny that has guided them forward. For Napoleon Bonaparte, it was his star that he always felt an ascendance when he made the right move. Just for Socrates, it was his daemon, a voice that he heard, perhaps from the gods, which inevitably spoke to him in the negative, telling him what to avoid. For Goethe, he also called it a daemon, a kind of spirit that dwelled within him and compelled him to fulfill his destiny. In more modern times, Albert Einstein talked of a kind of inner voice that shaped the direction of his speculations. All of these are variations on what Leonardo da Vinci experienced with his own sense of fate. Such feelings can be seen as purely mystical, beyond explanation, or as hallucinations and delusions. But there is another way to see them, as eminently real, practical, and explicable. It can be explained in the following way. All of us are born unique. This uniqueness is marked genetically in our DNA. We are at one time a phenomenon in the universe. Our exact genetic makeup has never occurred before, nor will it ever be repeated. For all of us, this uniqueness first expresses itself in childhood through certain primal inclinations. For Leonardo, it was exploring the natural world around his village and bringing it to life on paper in his own way. So Leonardo, in the story, as a young boy, he would steal paper from his father's or his father's office. He was a bastard child, so there's a taboo about him being around. But he would steal paper from his father's office, which at that time, paper was a kind of a rare commodity. And he would go around his village and he would sketch things that he would see. Rocks, trees, houses, whatever it was. And he loved doing that. It was just this natural calling for him to go and explore the world like that. And so, just back to the book, is that for others, it can be an early attraction to visual patterns, often an indication of future interest in mathematics. Or it can be an attraction to particular physical movements or spatial arrangements. How can we explain such inclinations? They are forces within us that come from a deeper place than conscious words can express. They draw us to certain experiences and away from others. As these forces move us here or there, they influence the development of our minds and in very particular ways. This primal uniqueness naturally wants us to assert and express itself, but some experience it more strongly than others. With masters, it is so strong that it feels like something that is its own external reality, a force, a voice, a destiny. In moments when we engage it in an activity that corresponds to our deepest inclinations, we might experience a touch of this. We feel as if the words we write or the physical movements we perform come so quickly and easily that they are coming from outside us. We are literally inspired. The Latin word meaning something from the outside breathing within us. Inspired, something from the outside breathing within us. I felt this way every time I would paint. Every time I would pick up a paintbrush, I would lose all sense of self, all sense of reality, and all that existed was was just the paint. I mean, the brushes were there, but really it was just the paint. And I was moving it, and I was there, and it was me, and I was it, and it just was all that there was. And every single time I would paint, it would be this way. And I've painted thousands upon thousands of paintings at this point in time, both on location and in the studio. I've done paintings. On location felt a little bit more transient than just maybe a little bit more spiritual. than just in the studio, but not by much. They were both these very, deep, moving experiences. And I always felt that with painting. And I haven't felt that way in anything else in my life. And to be quite truthful with you, I haven't really painted at all for many years now. I've lived an unauthentic self. I've lived an unauthentic life. Simply because it does not pay. I mean, most people, when they talk about this, there's a myriad of different things about it too. But no, there wasn't. I'm just trying to justify it. What it was is just simply doesn't pay. It doesn't pay well enough. Actually, that's probably a better one. It does pay. It did pay. I did earn, a fair amount from it, but it doesn't pay enough. But it, for better or worse, is my divine calling, my vocation. And what I'm trying to extrapolate now with my life and what I'm doing here is to find some semblance of ways of which I can make this fucking thing work, because I cannot escape it. It constantly calls to me when I sleep, when I'm awake, when I'm dreaming, when I'm not dreaming, when I'm staring into the distance, or when I'm just vegging out. It's just there, calling me, beckoning me, just screaming at me. And I'm trying to put different noises on to blare it out, but I can't. It's my authentic self, and I cannot run from it. And so what I'm trying to do at the moment, what this book is helping me with tremendously, is to try and piece together how I can pull this into reality without, sacrificing the lives of my family for fucking being authentic to myself, And that's the struggle with this. And that's the dark side of mastery, is that you may have a vocation that is not profitable. Unfortunately, in this world, you have to be profitable to survive. It's just, you cannot be it otherwise. And so while I haven't been painting these last many years, what I have been doing has been dedicating myself to the art of sales, the art of business, the art of marketing. And I've been really learning, absorbing, and transforming my mind to understand and incorporate those ideas and teachings into myself. And it's been fantastic. I've learned so much from it, and how to operate and how to maneuver and how to do things. So much so that coming back into all this, I'm not sure how this is all going to pan out, how I'm going to perform, how I'm going to do things, but that's yet to remain seen. But I'm working it out, and I'm coming back to it because I can't escape it. And I think the more and more I try to, because one of the lessons that my father taught me when I was young, and this is just intrinsically hardwired into my brain, one of the lessons that he taught me is that learn from other people's mistakes. And learn from other people's mistakes is what he would always reiterate to me every waking moment of my life. And so what my brain as a child, and still does now to this very day, is that as soon as somebody's got a lesson, as soon as somebody has some advice, as soon as somebody's got a story to share, my brain is like a sponge, and I'm just absorbing every little bit of it. And I'm just going like, okay, all right, you did that, and then this happened, and you did this, and you learned this. Wow, okay, boom, it's in my brain forever. And while that was the teaching, learn from other people's mistakes, as I got older, I added on to that teaching as well. I added a new part to it. I added learn from people's successes too. So my father gave me learn from other people's mistakes, and what I gave myself was learn from people's successes as well. And so now I've got this brain that just innately is just learn. Why I bring this up is because going back to the authentic self, my vocation, my calling, trying to shun it and snuff it out, cannot do it. What I'm learning is that there's other people, of course, in life that have been there, done that, and tried to suffocate who they really were. And what you find is that they become this absolute wreck of a human being. Time and time again, I've seen this play out. People I know, people I've read about, people you see online, people that express their thoughts in podcasts and things like that. They become this absolute wreck of a human being. And so I realized that, shit, okay, I need to course correct right now because I do not want to become that. So heeding those warnings of these people where they've gotten to 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, and they've just snuffed out who they were truly supposed to be and just hammered through what they thought they ought to do in this life. They are severely depressed, alcoholic, suicidal, many of which have gone beyond suicidal and actually have committed to taking of their own lives. And so in an effort to circumnavigate that or leave that apart. Yeah, get some fucking birds. In an effort to try and get rid of all that, I am actively trying to piece together how I can maneuver this so that I don't get to 30 years old and want to kill myself. Yeah, so we'll see how that plays out. But interesting thought about things that develop in our minds in very particular ways, and how it's a sort of primal natural inclination. Back to the book. Let us state that in the following way, at your birth, a seed is planted. I might have already read this, but go over it again. Let us state in the following way, at your birth, a seed is planted. That a seed is uniqueness. It wants to grow, transform itself, flower to its full potential. It has a natural assertive energy to it. Your life's task is to bring that seed to flower, to express your uniqueness through your work. You have a destiny to fulfill. The stronger you feel and maintain it as a force, a voice, or whatever form, the greater your chance for fulfilling this life's task and achieving mastery. What weakens this voice, what makes you not feel it or even doubt its existence, it's the degree of which you have succumbed to another force in life. Social pressure to conform. The counterforce can be very powerful. You want to fit into a group. Unconsciously, you might feel that what makes you different is embarrassing or painful. Your parents often act as a counterforce as well. They may seek to direct you to a career path that is lucrative and comfortable. If these counterforces become strong enough, you can lose complete contact with your uniqueness, with who you really are. Your inclinations and desires become modeled on those of others. That's where I think the last couple of years sort of became, is that I became a model of pathways of others. You know, I started listening to people that was like, okay, how do I make coin? How do I make money? What do I need to do? What are the pathways that are lucrative and comfortable? And I started modeling myself after those things. I became unauthentic. I became a shell of myself. This can set you off on a very dangerous path. You end up choosing a career that does not really suit you. Your desire and interest slowly wane, and your work suffers for it. You come to see pleasure and fulfillment as something that comes from outside your work. Because you are increasingly less engaged in your career, you fail to pay attention to changes going on in the field. You fall behind the times and pay a price for this. At moments when you must make important decisions, you flounder or follow what others are doing because you have no sense of inner direction or radar to guide you. You have broken contact with your destiny as formed at birth. Fuck me. That's exactly how I feel about my last couple of years, is that I chose a career that didn't really suit me, and my desires and interests slowly sort of really, maybe not even slowly, quickly dissipated for whatever I'd chosen. And so I became a mediocre sort of version of the path of which I sort of chose because I'm not interested in it. It's not appealing to me. I have to, it utilizes 1/10 of my brain power to do these things. It's really so simple-minded, and I'm dealing with people on a daily basis which are very simple-minded too. The work is simple, the job is simple, everything's simple, and it's boring, it's tedious. You know, I feel like a monkey in a cage just clicking a button, and that's it. But it pays. But it makes money. But it produces income and it's sustainable. This dumb shit. As if life was only tantamount to just producing income. But it's the catch-22, right? Yeah. However, I don't believe it's so, oh, woe is me or anything like that. What I do think it is, though, is that, okay, you need to pivot really quickly, really hard. And I've pivoted a lot in my life really quickly, really hard for various different circumstances that were unforeseen to me. I at one point in time was going to open up my own real estate office, but unfortunately the floor fell out from underneath me for a bunch of different circumstances. I mean, if you're interested, I'll talk about this another time, but and so I had to pivot really quickly and like, okay, shit, what else can I do? Let's find something else I can do really, really quick. And I did, and it worked. But none of these things I am remotely passionate about, or I'm enjoying, or have, find that my natural skills align with them. And I feel that. I feel like I've become a shell of myself. I've broken contact, like it says in the book. I've broken contact with your destiny as formed at birth. And I'm desperately struggling to make contact with it again. That's what I'm doing. Back to the book. At all costs, you must avoid such a fate. The process of following your life's task all the way to mastery can essentially begin at any point in life. The hidden force within you is always there and ready to be engaged. The process of realizing your life's task comes in 3 stages. First, you must connect and reconnect with your inclinations, the sense of uniqueness. The first step then is always inward. The search, the path for signs of that inner voice or force. You clear away all the other voices that might confuse you, parents, peers. You look for an underlying pattern at the core of your character that you must understand as deeply as possible. So, first step, go back in your past. What is it about your childhood that you naturally were drawn towards or naturally loved or enjoyed? Typically going to be a good sign. For me, painting, art, and I have a whole range of different signs that tell me that was good for me. For you, I'm not too sure. What is it? Think back in your past as a child, growing up. What are you naturally drawn towards? And I don't just mean things that you're naturally stimulated by, because I mean fucking anything, right? You're naturally stimulated by scrolling Instagram, but I don't think that's your inner calling. I don't think that's your destiny, what you put here on this earth to do. Infinitely scroll fucking Instagram. Wow. What was it as a child that you were just excited about? You're like, I'm going to be this thing. And that you gave up. Good starting place to go back and search. So first step, inward. Second step, back to the book. Second, with this connection established, you must look at the career path you are already on or about to begin. The choice of this path or redirection of it is critical. To help in this stage, you will need to enlarge your concept of work itself. Too often we make a separation in our lives. There is work and there is life outside work, where we find real pleasure and fulfillment. Work is often seen as a means for making money so we can enjoy the second life that we lead. Even if we derive some satisfaction from our careers, we still tend to compartmentalize our lives in this way. This is a depressing attitude because in the end we spend a substantial part of our waking life at work. If we experience this time as something to get through on the way to real pleasure, then our hours of work represent a tragic waste of the short time we have to live. Instead, you want to see your work as something more inspiring, as part of your vocation. The word vocation comes from Latin meaning to call or to be called. Its use in relation to work began in early Christianity. Certain people were called to a life in the church. That was their vocation. They could recognize this literally by hearing a voice from God, who had chosen them for this profession. Over time, the word became secularized, referring to any work or study that a person felt was suited to his or her interests, particularly a manual craft. It is time, however, that we return to the original meaning of the word, for it comes much closer to the idea of life's task and mastery. The voice in this case that is calling you is not necessarily coming from God, but from deep within. It emanates from your individuality. It tells you which activities suit your character, and at a certain point it calls you to a particular form of work or career. Your work then is something connected deeply to who you are, not a separate compartment of your life. You develop then a sense of your vocation. Finally, you must see your career or vocational path more as a journey with twists and turns. Apologies, let me stop there before I go into the final part. Second part, right? Connection established, you must look to a career path you're already on, right? Derives your satisfaction from work, and careers tend to compartmentalize our lives in this way. 2 lives. One we work in, the one that we really want, the one outside of work. Work means to an end, you're spending all your time in there. Outside of it, you're working to live instead of living to work. Now, I think you got to reframe the word work. We associate work with a job with just over broke. We associate just over broke as being just the pain of life, right? The pain of existence. We want to get away from that, right? What we want to do is not have 2 lives. We want to have one, right? Because that's all we got. Right? We don't have 2 lives to live here on earth, right? And we especially don't want to spend the first life work in a job that is just a means to an end. For God's sake, we only have so much time in our lives. Do we really want to dedicate the waking moments of it to something that we don't want to fucking do? I don't think so. And nor should you. And so the second part of that is understanding what is it that we're doing right now in this career pathway. Right? We want to align that as closely as we can to the vocation of which we're called to, right? The thing that we found in the first step, find your vocation, find your calling. Second step, find the way of which we can marry our career and our pathway and the job and the work to that vocation somehow, some way. And it may not be easy. Believe me, I'm trying. It's not easy. I have tried. I've worked it. It's not easy. It's failed many times for me. And many other things have been successful. And I've trying to work backwards now to try and work it forward again. But that's okay. Nobody said it was going to be easy. Although you can make yourself feel and identify with it being easy. But second step, realign what you're doing now. Third, final step. Finally, you must see your career or vocational path more as a journey with twists and turns rather than a straight line. You begin by choosing a field or position that roughly corresponds to your inclinations. So, good, not perfect, right? This initial position offers you room to maneuver important skills to learn. You don't want to start with something too lofty, too ambitious. You need to make a living and establish confidence. Once on this path, you discover certain side routes that attract you, right? While other aspects of this field leave you cold, you adjust and perhaps move to a related field. Continue to learn more about yourself, always expanding off your skill base. Like Leonardo, you take what you do for others and make it your own. Eventually, you will hit upon a particular field, niche, or opportunity that suits you perfectly. You will recognize it when you find it because it will spark that childlike sense of wonder and excitement. It will feel right. Once found, everything will fall into place. You'll learn more quickly and more deeply. Your skill level will reach a point where you will be able to claim your independence from within the group you work for and move out on your own. In a world in which there is so much we cannot control, this will bring you ultimate form of power. You will determine your circumstances as your own master. You will no longer be subject to the whims of tyrannical bosses or scheming peers. This emphasis on your uniqueness and life's task might seem poetic, conceit without any bearing or particular realities, but in fact, it is extremely relevant to the times that we live in. We are entering a world in which we can really rely less and less upon the state, the corporation, or family, or friends to help and protect us. It is globalized, harshly competitive environment. We must learn to develop ourselves. At the same time, it is a world teeming with critical problems and opportunities, best solved and seized by entrepreneurs, individuals, or small groups who think independently, adapt quickly, and possess unique perspectives. Your individualized creative skills will be at a premium. So, third step is so go back over first three things. First thing, find that calling, go back in your life. Second thing, find what sort of semblance of a career path or vocation you can kind of understand what that might align with that calling in the beginning. So just find something that's okay-ish, right? Doesn't need to be perfect. Just need to find something that sort of fits the bill at least a little bit, and something that you can learn and expand from, right? Something that's going to teach you something. Third thing is that on that pathway of finding that just okay-ish thing, we're going to look for things that work for us great, look for things that don't work for us, right? And get rid of that, right? And start moving towards things that are working for us really, really well, whatever it might be. So for me in particular, and to share this with you, I went through this process myself. My process was, okay, fuck, I can't continue to make a living from painting things now that I need to support a child and a fiance. Okay, I could support myself before it on an individual basis. Now that I have two other people on my support list, I cannot. What do I need to do? Okay, what am I good at? And what I love and what do other people value? Okay, so I'm good with networking with people. I'm good with people. I'm good with, getting commissions, working with people, negotiating with people. I love that interaction with people. Okay, what can I do that's like that? Oh, my friend, he's working in real estate. Hey man, what's that like? What's that like? He's like, oh, it's just about forming connections with people. It's about working with others, building relationships, and just helping them get to the place or thing that they want to get. Perfect. That's what I'm doing already with art, and I love doing that. Okay, great. That's not perfect, but it's great. So let me go down there. So I went down that pathway in real estate, finding many, many things that I'm enjoying about it. Being out in different places, different houses is always fun. Meeting different people every single day, always fun. But there's certain things that I did not like about it, right? The implications to the economy, the implications to foreign investors, investments, development properties, all these other things that I just did not enjoy whatsoever. Rental properties and things of that nature, and dealing with people on that sort of level was not fun at all. And I didn't enjoy that part of it at all. Okay, so get rid of that. What else can I focus in on? And which direction can I move into? Right? And I've slowly progressed through that. Now I'm at a point where I've lost sight of my natural vocation, and I've just kind of gone with the flow a little bit too much. So now I'm at a point in step 2, maybe actually I'm in a point with step 3 where I've got to sort of navigate, right? I've got to eventually hit a particular field and niche opportunity that suits you perfectly. I'm at that point where I'm trying to find that niche opportunity that suits me perfectly. I think I'm finding it now with what I'm doing with reading and the podcasts and things of that nature. I'm trying to expand and extrapolate that more. I want to do more perhaps speaking gigs, in-person stuff, maybe one-on-one consulting type of things like that, because I really, really enjoy that a lot. And when I'm painting, that flow state when I was painting was very deep and philosophical, that I can now enter that flow state whenever I like. I can just switch it on right now. And here I go. In fact, I think I'm in it right now. So what's really cool about this is that now I'm in that third state. I'm trying to find that niche that suits perfectly. The skill level will reach a point where you will be able to claim your independence from within the group you work for and move out on your own. That's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm trying to move out on my own, trying to maneuver and piece together all the things that I've naturally been, interested in my life and have skills towards, right? So back to the book, right? I'm going to reiterate this part here. I think it's important. Think of it this way. What we lack most in modern world is a sense of a larger purpose to our lives. In the past, it was organized religion, and that often supplied this. But most of us now live in a secularized world. We human animals are unique. We must build our own world. We do not simply react to events out of biological scripting, but without a sense of direction provided to us, we tend to flounder. We don't we don't know how to fill up and structure our time. There seems to be no defining purpose to our lives. We are perhaps not conscious of this emptiness, but it infects us in all kinds of ways. Feeling that we are called to accomplish something is the most positive way for us to supply this sense of purpose and direction. It is a religious-like quest for each of us. This quest should not be seen as a selfish or antisocial. It is in fact connected to something much larger than individual lives. Our evolution as a species has depended on creation of tremendous diversity of skills and ways of thinking. We thrive by collecting activity of people supplying their individual talents. Without such diversity, a culture dies. Your uniqueness at birth is a marker of this necessary diversity. To the degree you cultivate and express it, you are fulfilling a vital role. Our times might emphasize equality, which we then mistake for the need for everyone to be the same. But what we really mean by this is the equal chance for the people to express their differences, to let 1,000 flowers bloom. Your vocation is more than the work that you do. It is intimately connected to the deepest part of your being and is manifestation of the intense diversity in nature and within human culture. In the sense, you must see your vocation, its eminently poetic and inspiring. Some 2,600 years ago, the ancient Greek poet Pindar wrote, "Become who you are by learning who you are." What he meant is following. You are born with a particular makeup and tendencies that make you as a piece of fate. It is who you are to the core. Some people never become who they are, and they end up wearing a mask that hides their true nature. If you allow yourself to learn, you really are, by paying attention to the voice and force within you, that you can become what you are fated to become, an individual master. What we lack most in the modern world is a larger purpose to our lives. That larger purpose is often, lacking because, quite simply, we hide it. We wear that mask, like he says, and many of us sort of seek to do so willingly, right? And maybe most of us seek to do so out of necessity. Like myself, I sought to do it out of necessity many, 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 many times. I read this last part because I think it's important. What it is it's a reversal of it. So when you are faced with deficiencies instead of strengths and inclinations, this is the strategy you must assume. Ignore your weaknesses and resist the temptation to be more like others. Instead, like Temple Grandin, direct yourself as Temple Grandin was a boxing coach who he just wrote about there. So go about that and don't worry about that. Direct yourself toward the small things you are good at. Do not dream or make grand plans for the future, but instead concentrate on becoming proficient at these simple and immediate skills. This will bring your confidence and become a base from which you can expand to other pursuits. Proceeding in this way, step by step, you will hit upon your life's task. Great advice right there. Focus on your strengths, your natural inclinations, and then step by step expand outwards as you become more and more proficient in those things. That's what I think I've been doing these last couple of years. I just focusing on what I'm naturally good at and just slowly stepping out. But somewhere along the pathway, I just lost sight of my vocation, my calling. And I just became this drone, this sort of fucking idiot. Anyways, Back to the book. Understand your life's task does not always appear to you through some grand or promising inclination. It can appear in the guise of your deficiencies, making you focus on the one or two things that you are inevitably good at. Working at these skills, you learn the value of discipline and see the rewards you get from your efforts. Like a lotus flower, your skills will expand outward from a center of strength and confidence. Do not envy those who seem to be naturally gifted. It is often a curse, as such types rarely learn the valuable diligence and focus, the value of diligence and focus, and they pay for this later in life. That was me. I was naturally gifted in painting and art, and I took it for granted in myriad different ways. Thankfully, not as extreme as most, but I did, for a long period of time, did take that for granted and lent into my natural talents for it. And now, I don't believe in natural talents per se. I'll talk about this another time, but I definitely became complacent in that, right? I didn't learn the value of diligence and focus, and paid for it later in life. It's very true. I did, however, thankfully find a way to just really hone in on the skill side of things, because talent comes to a point where it runs out, and then you've got to pick up skill, and that's where skill takes over, where talent falls short, right? Talent only goes so far. It really does. It's kind of like a speed boost, right? Until you run out of petrol, right? It gives you a head start for sure, but it's only so far, and that's where skill needs to take up arms in that, and that's where you need to learn. What do you say? What was he saying? Diligence and hard work, or whatever it was, right? That's where talent runs out. And that's where skill needs to begin. And that's where I was. Is that, thankfully, I've avoided paying for this too much later in life. I've sort of circumvented it. Back to the book. This strategy applies as well to any setbacks and difficulties we may experience. In such moments, it is generally wise to stick to the few things we know and do well, and to re-establish our confidence. If someone like Temple Grandin, with so much against her at birth, can find her way to her life's task and mastery, it means it must be a power accessible to us all. Oh, sorry, Temple Grandin was the other chick. Apologies. Read the book. It's fantastic. Sooner or later, something seems to call to us in a particular path. This is a quote. You may remember this something as a signal calling in childhood, when an urge out of nowhere, a fascination, particular turn of events, struck like an and struck like an annunciation. This is what I must do. This is what I've got to have. This is who I am. If not this vivid and sure, the call may have been more like a gentle pushing in a stream, which you drifted unknowingly to a particular spot on the bank. Looking backwards, you sense that fate had a hand in it. A calling may be postponed, avoided, and timidly missed, but it may also possess you completely. Whatever eventually it will out. Whatever eventually it will out. It makes its claim. Extraordinary people display calling most evidently. Perhaps that's why they fascinate. Perhaps too, they are extraordinary because their calling comes through so clearly. They are so loyal to it. Extraordinary people bear the better witness because they show what ordinary mortals simply can't. We seem to have less motivation and more distraction, yet our destiny is driven by the same universal engine. Extraordinary people are not a different category. The workings of this engine in them are simply more transparent. James Hillman quote. Fantastic quote to end this on, right? Extraordinary people are extraordinary because their life's purpose seems to be more exemplified within them, more, what would you say, apparent in them, so unmissable in them that it's kind of like, wow, look at this person. They know what they're doing. Whether it comes naturally and screaming at you, yelling at you, or it's whispering to you, guiding you on a river, slowly setting you on course to land you on a bank along the side of the river where you're supposed to be. Whether whatever sort of way it presents itself, do not deny yourself that voice. Do not try and snuff out that voice. Listen to it, heed it, internalize it, make it part of who you are right now, this moment. Thankfully, I've been so lucky to course correct so quickly in my life because my father taught me those valuable lessons of learning from other people's mistakes. And then I would subsequently later in life add into that, learn from other people's successes. So I've been very fortunate to have those lessons and that skill set and that mind frame just implemented into my, or just hammered into my brain from a young age. And I think that's where we should all sort of partake in this. I feel like I've been slumping. I think that's where we should all sort of partake in this sort of new knowledge and learning, is that those 3 steps: go back into your childhood, go back into your past, find out what it is that you've naturally have inclination for, or a little talent, or a little gift for, whatever it might be, however weird it might be, whatever it is, however strange it might be, because it might not be typical. Perhaps my calling, my vocation as an artist, as a painter, I've seen that expand out to many, many different things, not just painting. It started in painting, then it expanded outwards. Find what it is that started and then see where it expands out for you. For me personally, it started in painting, and I was able to touch flow, and I was able to understand flow, and I could switch it on and off just like that. And now I can do that with everything in my life. But when I would paint, I would be in this state that was so philosophical that I could just see things for the way in which they were supposed to be seen. And it's just so interesting, related to many other things in my life. And then I became interested in talking with people, and I've always been interested in reading, in philosophy, in writing, in poetry, and expanding my knowledge ever outwards. That while it started in painting, it's expanded outwards more and more. What that looks like specifically, I don't know. Perhaps I will when I look back retrospectively at my life when I'm older, God willing. Or perhaps when I die, it'll be revealed to me. I don't know. But for the most part now, I'm on that path, and I'm following that through. It's becoming this thing of which is tangible. It's not perfect. It is great, but I'm slowly expanding outwards from that. I hope you gain a lot of insight from this book, a lot of knowledge from that short first chapter. I highly, 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 highly recommend that you pick this up, read it, internalize it, live it, and let it change your life, as it has for me. I'll let you know. We'll do a bigger podcast on it in its entirety once I finish it. But I felt called to share that first chapter with everybody because I think we could all use it right now. All right. Stay safe. Catch you.